Hi.
Hi. You're
How?
little. I'm trying to figure out how to make you bigger.
No, maybe I like to be little. A
A
different view.
little pocket size.
Oh, how funny.
I
That's
don't know how to make it big.
um
I
up
don't
in
need,
the left-hand corner, the green dot.
there's not one.
What's happening? That's crazy.
I know.
Weird.
But in full screen. I never had that option before.
It has pulled up some weird stuff for me lately too. I feel like I'm
Yeah.
loud. Um, so whenever we started the book review on Tuesday, I felt like everything was different on Zoom, and I was like, what happened? So
No.
I know it was a little jarring.
Yes. Oh, I'm so excited about this tonight.
I know. Me too.
Hmm.
We already got some people in the chat. How are you guys? Where are y'all Zooming from? I would love to know. It was, I feel like today was like the first day it really started to feel hot.
Yeah. And I felt it yesterday. It zapped me. I was literally asleep at 8:30 last night.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it was just a little tired.
Yes, I understand that. Well, I know it's gotten like I think today I saw 97,
Yeah.
but which I was like, I mean, that's not bad right now. Like
I keep looking ahead, still no 100.
August will have its way with
Yes,
us.
right. And
Sure.
that's fine. As long as it doesn't start in June.
I know. Mysterious.
Yeah.
But curious to know if we have lots of Texans on the chat who commiserate with us because this has been a pretty mild summer, in my opinion,
Yeah.
which has
Look
been
at all your Oscars in the background. Very impressive.
all my awards.
All your
Far
awards.
away, so you don't actually know what they're for. But if you
Yeah.
saw what they're for, you may not respect the Oscars as much. There's only one real award, and it's actually you can't even see it. That one's that one is the real award.
Hey, you can't even see it.
I know. It's
What's your
fine.
award for?
Baylor gave Fabled an award for diversity and behavioral health conversations.
That is the award you always want.
I know. I was
Yeah.
thrilled. It
You're
was
number one in that, right?
yes.
You
Yes.
always laugh that with Amazon, you can say, "Oh, we're number one bestseller in," and it's like the most
In a
random
very
kind.
specific genre. I know. I whenever people say that, I'm always like, I would like to read more closely and see
Mhm.
what you are a bestseller actually
Yeah,
of.
it's amazing. Well, yeah, there's just a lot of number one
Yes.
authors, and I'm going to just stop there.
Yes, it's true. It's true. But hey, we're all here for authors to be hyped about themselves.
Yes, did y'all like the book? Oh my gosh, I love this book so much. I hope you did
Yes.
too.
It was when I finished it, Elizabeth was like, "Did you love it?" I was like, "I loved it." And she said it was an Allison book. And I was like, it was an
Mhm.
Allison book.
I was like, knew it. As soon as I read it, I thought, this is the one. Allison will like this one.
Yes. We have a message from Kai to me. She said Elinor should be on any minute. She was visiting family.
Oh,
For sure. I remember one time we did this our book club and where my location where I was going to be like didn't work out and then I had to switch it really fast and I think that you were calling, Kai was calling and I was like trying to like set up. It felt like crazy. And do you remember
weird.
that?
I too, yeah. There was one time that you just completely left.
Yes. My internet was like, peace out.
Yeah.
And then
Like,
you had full control.
yes. Oh, one of the best we've done for a while.
Oh,
That's neat.
it was a great one. I know I have lots of questions. The questions came very easily too, because when sometimes when I'm reading, I can be like, oh, remember for sure going to talk about that. But
Mhm.
this was really great.
There she is.
Hey,
Hi,
Hello.
hi.
how are you, Elinor?
I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you
Forgive
so
my
much.
humble surroundings. I'm in the bedroom of my brother's farmhouse in Saskatchewan right now. So this is
I
the only
will
quiet place in the house.
please thank them for letting us pull you away from family to talk. It was
I'm
Now, are you
able
in
to
our
go
time zone, Eleanor? Or are you
for
one?
an hour earlier.
Yes. So you're more
okay.
like Colorado, that
Yeah,
time. Yeah.
mountain time.
Mountain.
Yes, mountain time.
Well,
Hmm.
great. Well, now that you're here, I will go ahead and get started. I am Allison Frenzel. I'm one of the co-owners here at Fabled Bookshop, and Elizabeth is our adult book buyer. We are absolutely thrilled to talk to Elinor Florence today about her beautiful book, which I'm obsessed with, and I say that very like completely just obsessed. It was so wonderful. And we have lots of questions for her, which you may also have questions for those that are joining us. We have the chat open, which you feel free to type a question in there. We have the Q&A. You can type a question in there if you would rather do that. We'll try our best to get to them. Most likely, you might even ask one of the questions that you have on your mind. And this most important thing about this book club is we will be discussing the ending. So if you have not finished this book, please do yourself a favor, close the laptop, come back to it. We don't want to spoil. We're not here for spoilers at all, but we will be spoiling it if you stay. So if you are still reading it and want to finish it, don't worry. We will have this recorded and it will be sent out to you. Anyone that has registered about 24 hours after this webinar concludes. So don't worry, you will get a copy of it. You'll be able to hear everything that we have to ask. I think it's one of my favorite things is that we get to discuss the ending. And what we've heard feedback from other authors is that they enjoy it because usually you're just promoting the book. But to dive in and ask about the ending, which we do have questions about the ending, is really fun. And if you want to stick around at the end, we will announce our next month's book club choice, and you won't want to miss that. So without further ado, I will let Elizabeth introduce our author.
All right, so tonight we have Elinor Florence. She grew up in Saskatchewan, in a Saskatchewan farm and earned degrees in English and journalism. She worked for newspapers in all 4 Western provinces, spent 8 years writing for Reader's Digest Canada, and even published her own award-winning community newspaper. Her first novel, Bird's Eye View, was a national bestseller, while the second, Wildwood, was named one of Kobo's 100 most popular Canadian books of all time. Finding Flora was inspired by her own Scottish homesteading and Indigenous ancestors. She's a member of the, is it Métis? Métis?
It's Métis.
Métis, thank you. I wanted to get that correct. So Métis Nation of British Columbia, and makes her home in the mountain resort of Invermere. So Elinor, I have to say, sometimes I have a spidey sense when it comes to looking at my catalogs. And this one was just one that I saw in the back of the catalog, and something just went off in my brain, and I thought, I want to know more about this book. I read it in one day. I think I read it maybe in February, March, and immediately told Allison, we've got to do this one for book club. I absolutely loved it. I'm Gen X, grew up loving Little House on the Prairie, so that kind of story really speaks to me. But I absolutely loved it, and I'm so thrilled that you are joining us this evening to talk about it.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. So I have you to thank for appearing at your book club, and I've done numerous book clubs, but this is the farthest afield that I've gone. So I'm really keen to share my story with your Texas readers.
You know, we all love frontier, strong women. That kind of is a trait that we share with these
Right,
women in the
for
store.
sure.
So, yeah.
Well, first, I would love to have you tell us a little bit about your writing background.
Well, I was a journalist all my life, so I took my journalism degree and worked for newspapers and magazines. And I got a job with Reader's Digest. I actually enterprised a story. I ran across a guy who'd driven his propane truck off a cliff and lived to tell the tale, and the words drama in real life sprang into my mind. Remember those old articles? So I sent it into the Digest, and they published it and asked me if I wanted to become a regular contributor. And I think that really helped me to make the transition from nonfiction to fiction, which is actually very difficult. But in newspapers, you're taught always write what people say, never what they think or feel, because you don't know what they are thinking or feeling. But with the digest, my editors were like, well, how did the guy feel when he was lying there with a log, across his legs and he couldn't move? So that helped. And then when I finally ended my journalism career, I sold my community newspaper and I decided to try writing fiction. And it was a difficult transition because, especially dialogue, because I was so used to using my notes, recording what people said and then repeating it. And I had to actually make up stuff, which is the antithesis of what you're told as a journalist. Anyway, I did write my first novel, Bird's Eye View, which was a wartime novel, and that was successful. So I decided I would try again. And I wrote a novel about a woman, a single mother from Phoenix, Arizona, who gets a phone call from a lawyer one day and inherits an abandoned farm way up in northern Canada on condition that she lives there for 1 year off the grid. So that really sparked my interest then in homesteading. And I thought, I have to write a book about a woman homesteading alone.
Mm. Well, I have to tell you, when I was a little girl, and we're talking, early 1980s, we had a subscription to the Reader's Digest, and every month I was such a reading fanatic. I would grab the Reader's Digest, and all I wanted to read was drama in real life. So that was, I always say that sparked my interest in natural disasters, mysteries, and
Right.
thrillers. But it was like, what is the drama in real life this time? So when I heard that you had written in drama in real life, I'm like, I knew it. That was the Spidey sense that went off. Well, for our just to start the conversation, can you remind us the kind of a brief synopsis of Finding Flora?
Yes. So the book takes place in 1905, and Flora is a newlywed from Scotland, and she's traveling across Canada on an old steam train with her new husband. And she realizes to her horror that she's made a terrible mistake marrying the guy because he's abusive. So she jumps off the train in the middle of the night, finds herself alone on the prairie, doesn't have enough money to get back to Scotland, and decides that her best chance of surviving and hiding from this guy is to claim a free homestead from the government. And as you know, Canada and the United States were very similar in that regard. They both had a Homestead Act, which gave a parcel of free land to anybody willing to meet certain conditions. And so Flora gets her 160 acres of free land, and basically that's when her adventures begin. She she meets some other women in the area who are helpful, a widow with children from Wales, a Métis woman, which, so that's kind of a recent term in Canada. It means uh, Indigenous white mixed blood person. Mhm. It's a
We saw
legal
you were Cree.
definition.
We were kind of confused because we saw something about Cree but
Yes,
Métis. So,
pre-ancestry.
yeah.
So until 1982, the legal term for these people was half-breed, and that's the term that I used in the book because that was authentic to the time. In 1982, they changed that definition to Métis, which means mixed in French.
Mm.
So it's just a legal terminal term. Anyway, a Métis woman, and also two American women from Boston who are there farming and raising poultry. So together they form their own little cohort, and they face a lot of challenges from a hostile government and some, bad guys, I guess. But it all ends well.
Yes. Well, I would love to hear where the idea came from. How did you come up with it?
Well, I knew I wanted to write a book about a woman homesteading alone, and when I started researching it, I thought, this is nuts. The Canadian government never allowed single women to claim a free homestead. The American government was much more open to the idea, and they did allow single women to homestead. And so I read books about women in Montana specifically. 1 out of 5 homesteaders in Montana were women. So that
Amazing.
was really interesting. Yeah. And then So then I thought, well, how's Flora going to get a homestead if she wasn't allowed to? So I had to find a legal loophole. And, I did find one in the story. She meets somebody and, buys their homestead scrip and stuff. But that was the genesis for it. And because my own grandparents were homesteaders and my great grandparents actually from Scotland, I grew up in a family. Interestingly, like 5 minutes ago, we were sitting at the kitchen table talking about homesteading history because my grandparents homesteaded, my parents took over the farm, my brother took over the farm where I'm currently staying, and his nephew is over here for supper and he's taking over the farm. So honestly, there is not a meal in this house where we do not talk about family history, Canadian history, Western history. And in many ways, Canada and the United States shared that common homesteading history.
We were just talking today about, I was telling Allison about the book Lone Women by Victor
Oh,
Laval about a woman homesteader in Montana, and just how interesting that the American government said yes to that, and it was a little not quite as much on the Canadian side. So that was interesting. All the things you learn when you read.
yes, I read that book and I thought it was a very well done book. It almost it veered into the supernatural, right?
Yes.
It
Yeah.
was kind of a crossover from historical fiction to fantasy, but very interesting.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the farming detail. So it sounds like you have a lot of first and second hand knowledge of farming. And again, I think there's something in a way sort of romantic about that for us, the pioneer life and then the farming life. Um, can you talk about, did you talk to your family about that? What kind of research did you do into farming? Because it was such an interesting book about that, and really about women trying to, in a man's world.
Well, I didn't have to do a lot of research in that area because, I grew up on a farm and I actually consider myself a farmer because I own a quarter section of land here, and my brother farms it for me. I grew up on I mean, it was different when I grew up. I grew up on two quarter sections. You know what a quarter section is, do you? For people who've read the book, you will know that that's a quarter section is 160 acres. My father had two quarter sections. My brother has 20. So
Okay.
farming has changed. They use GPS. I mean, he uses a combine harvester that cost $1 million. This is a big operation now here.
Mhm.
But essentially, it's the same thing. I mean, it's weather dependent. Uh, the crops are very similar. They're still growing wheat. We just went out and checked my wheat field on my quarter section and it's absolutely flourishing. So, it's different and yet much the same as it was 100 years ago.
What is it like in Canada with, I'm sure you've got a shorter growing season than we do here. How does that affect, I mean, how does that affect the crops? How long is that a big difference?
It is. Fortunately, plant scientists have created varieties of grain that mature faster now than they did 100 years ago. So whereas Flora was very anxious about frost, now they have shorter growing seasons and they do grow different varieties of grain. We grow canola here. I don't know if you know what that is. It's a
Canola
flowering.
oil. Yeah.
Yeah, we know canola
Right.
oil.
Big, yeah, it's canola is huge here now, but we never grew that when I was growing up because it was not able to mature fast enough. But now they've developed varieties that can mature quickly,
Hmm,
and we sell most of our canola to Japan, and I think probably you do too. I'm not sure.
That's
interesting.
amazing.
Mm.
Well, nothing delights me more than when I read a historical fiction than turning to the back and seeing an author's note that will detail what is true and what is not. Talk a little bit about the real people that you wove into this story.
Yes, well, of the residents of Ladyville, the only real people were the chicken ladies. They really were. Miss Green and Miss Edgar were a couple who farmed near Alex, Alberta, and they did raise poultry. And I found them in a local history book, and I thought, oh, these two are so classic. I have to put them in the book. The other characters were inspired. The other women were inspired by, my research. But Frank Oliver, the government minister who was so death on women farmers, he was a real character. He was very influential in the creation of Western Canada. But now that we are revisiting some of these people, they are talking now about renaming Frank Oliver Park in Edmonton because he
Wow.
he has been shown to be such a racist and sexist. William Van Horn was an American who came up to Canada and was hired to be in charge of building the Canadian Pacific Railway, which was a transcontinental railway from one side of Canada to the other. He was a real character. Very interesting guy. Who else? Well, Alex Westhead herself, of course, was a real character. And I don't know how much of the story to give away, but
Oh, you can give away everything. We've
oh,
all read it. Yes.
well, I could never find anything in writing to prove that she had had an affair with William Van Horn. But when I went to the Alex Wagon Wheel Museum, which is it's a little tiny village, the volunteers there, I said, so what's the story? Do you think she really had an affair? And they said, oh, yes, everyone in town knew about it. It was an open secret. So I said, okay, I'm going with that, you guys. Again, never able to authenticate that rumor, but he obviously was very taken with her. Otherwise, he wouldn't have named the village after her. And she was a snob. She was a British, upper crust snob who looked down on people in the community.
I really liked her development though, of being terrible in the beginning and then just,
Yeah, and
heartwarming.
then she saved the
Coming
day,
through.
right?
Yeah.
It was great.
Well,
Mhm.
I want to talk a little bit more about the research and what was important for you to get extremely accurate. Even learning about the laws of the time and finding the loopholes and making sure that the real people, which ones to make it real, which ones to imagine, even the women's rights at the time. And Allison brought it, we were talking today, like when you look at this research, you think, okay, this is enough. I've got enough research to begin the book. I would love to hear your philosophy on research.
Well, I love the research part. It's actually my favorite part, even more than the writing. I had to tear myself away from the research to start writing. I think I actually over-researched this book in a way because, for example, Flora's pearl, the freshwater pearl that she has in her petticoat, I read an entire book on freshwater pearl diving in Scotland in order to come up with 3 paragraphs. But then I got interested and I was like, well, maybe I should turn this into a whole subplot or a whole chapter. And then it ended up being a shorter thing. But as far my biggest surprise, I think, in doing the research was just how dangerous homesteading was. I knew it would be hard and grueling and, you know, but life was hanging in the balance almost every day. People died.
Yeah.
It was illness and accidents and starvation and freezing to death. And it was a terrifying situation, especially for people who didn't have a clue about what they were getting into. The whole, I'm not actually that familiar with how it worked in the United States, but in Canada, the Canadian government did something which I consider to be almost criminal, which was to go over to the UK, United Kingdom, and present this whole propaganda campaign about how they were coming to a Garden of Eden.
Oh, I have a book for you. The Worst Hard Time by
Oh,
Timothy Egan. Oh, so many people in the New England area came to no man's land in Oklahoma for the same thing.
yeah.
Yeah. So
So
I'm sorry, go ahead. Yes.
they were deceived as well.
Mhm.
Hmm. Yeah, and even if they had known, I don't think they could possibly have understood um, the dangers that they would face. One difference I think between Canada and the United States was in Canada, we did not have Indian wars as they were called in the U.S. So by the time the homesteaders arrived here, the indigenous tribes here had all signed treaties and been moved on to reserves. So there
Mhm.
was never any bloodshed. Whereas I think in the United States, homesteaders were actually, slaughtered in some
Yeah.
cases.
I always say that it's such a good thing for people to read historical fiction to gain a little perspective on difficulties of today, because we have no idea what what it was. I mean, there's things that absolutely could improve about right now, but when you think about the dangers and really the government 100 years ago, we're doing okay.
Yes, indeed.
Well, you
No,
mentioned oh, I'm sorry, keep going.
no, I was just going to say the homesteaders were a really important part of our history. They really laid the foundation for the Western, particularly the West, that we know and love today.
Mhm.
True. Well, you mentioned how the transition was really interesting to go from writing nonfiction to fiction. And Fran in the chat asked a really good question. It's kind of on the same lines as how do you decide how much of the story must be historically accurate versus your imagination?
Well, historical fiction is kind of an interesting genre because it spans such a wide range. So at one end of the spectrum, um, historical fiction authors try to remain as true as possible to history. And then it can veer right into fantasy, as we said. Outlander, for example, is a really good example because she does remain true to the history of Scotland, but at the same time, she's talking about time travel, which is complete fantasy. So I tend to be on the other end of the spectrum. I try to write my books as if people are walking through, my fictional characters are walking through actual history. So I try to keep all the details, the dates, and everything as authentic as I possibly can. But again, I remember agonizing over some little detail that I couldn't make fit. And my editor said, well, Eleanor, it is fiction. Like you can say that if you want to. And I was like, no, I just can't because it didn't happen that way in real life.
Mm,
Amazing.
I
I
love
love
it.
that.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the five female characters, and they all seem to have very interesting and distinct challenges to their time as homesteaders. Which of the characters did you find easier or more relatable than others? Did you feel that way, or was there one that was harder to write than another one?
Um, well, I guess I identified most with Flora. She was my main gal.
Mm-hmm.
And and because of my own Scottish ancestry, I kind of, my own great grandparents came from Scotland. So I kind of identified with her and found her the easiest to understand. Um, but I also really admired Jessie, um, the Indigenous Cree Scottish character, um, because I had modeled her after a woman that I read about who lived in my own community. And she was a real rootin' tootin', gun toting, horse breaking, dog training, hunting, guiding, person that I thought was a very interesting character. And I thought that I would bring her to life in Jessie MacDonald as being somebody who was really outside, the pale of society. She was really on her own and she loved it and she wanted to be that way. But at the same time, she was kind of lonely and she did like eventually to bond with the other women and find some sisterhood and fellowship with them.
I love a women helping women story. It's this one. It's another reason I loved it. So where are your ancestors from in Scotland? My ancestry is Scottish as well.
Mm. Well, I have two branches from Scotland. Two different guys came from Scotland to Canada originally to work for the Hudson Bay Company as fur trappers, fur traders. So one came from the Orkney Islands, which was way up in the north, and the other one came from the Highlands of Scotland, and a little village named Aurora, which is way up on the east coast of Scotland, the Highlands.
I
And
visited twice. I love, 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 love Scotland.
I know, right? It's so beautiful.
And it seems like there's a lot of Scottish history, Scottish ancestry that made its way to Canada, Nova
Yes.
Scotia, and yes, and the like.
Well, the Hudson Bay Company recruited Scottish guys particularly because it was a very harsh climate in Scotland, and they knew that they would be able to cope with the climate in Canada more easily. So they deliberately set out at one point, I think 70%. You know what the Hudson Bay Company is, right? It was a huge company that did all the fur trading with
Okay.
I
England.
read Centennial. There was a Scottish guy, or I guess he was French, but worked the fur trading in Centennial. It's another great book. But
Right. Right, that's right. Yeah, so they at one time about 70% of their employees came from the Orkney Islands, which is a very barren, desolate, frigid part of the world. But you know, they went. And so my two Scottish ancestors both married Indigenous women when they came to Canada because there were no white women. And then their children grew up and married each other. And so those were my great grandparents.
Okay.
Hmm.
That's really cool. Well, like Elizabeth said earlier, I feel like Texans, we appreciate a story like this. We are not the damsels in distress down here in the South.
Right.
We try our best to do things on our own when it's convenient. I always say, like, I'm a
but
feminist
it's not too
unless
hot.
it's inconvenient, and then I need somebody to help me. But I love when you were talking about your previous books that feature women kind of in hardship or living off the grid, providing for themselves. Is this something that you specifically personally have experience in? And if not, can you dive in a little bit about the difference of your books before compared to this one with those hardships?
Well, I guess I've had some experience because here on this farm, for example, we didn't have plumbing until I was 14.
Oh my
So I
God.
didn't have to research that part.
Yeah.
We did have electricity though, so but you know, I do understand rural life and the hardships of rural life, and I think that's part of my background. Um, and speaking of Texas, Paulette Giles is one of my favorite authors. I've read all of her books, and she's fabulous. I don't I don't know if she ever does public appearances, but it would be
Oh,
great to get you
she would
her
jump
on.
on it if she did.
Yeah, yeah, that would be awesome. Hmm.
She was a
Um,
good.
so I don't think, I think my books are all kind of in the same sweet spot, which is strong women battling the environment in many ways, as well as, you know, male, some
Yes.
hostile male characters, although not all the men in my book are bad. And I just had a comment from a male reader. He wrote and said, "Thank you for not making all the men in your book out to be assholes."
That's
Okay,
amazing.
fair enough, because obviously there were men who championed women and supported them, so it wasn't all bad.
Yes.
I love it.
Well, one of the things we love to do at our store is we call it windows and mirrors, and we love to find books that represent other cultures. And I love Canadian books, learning about Canadian authors. We had Tom Ryan on about a couple of months ago. Was saying a couple of weeks ago, I got to see Canada. I was at Niagara Falls and I waved at Toronto. Um, but so this is a two-part question. One of them is, do you have, if people love this genre, sort of this pioneering genre, we now have 3 books from you, but do you have any other books that you would recommend in this genre? And part B of the question is, do you have any other Canadian authors that you can recommend to us? Because we love our Canadian neighbors and want to learn more about your culture.
Hmm. Well, my all-time favorite Western book is Lonesome Dove. I'm sure you've read that trilogy. Yeah. For Canadian authors, I can recommend a woman named Genevieve Graham. She writes Canadian historical fiction.
Okay.
And another author named Maya Caron, Caron, who also writes Canadian historical fiction.
Did you ever read the Jeanette Oakes books? They
I
were,
I did. She was incredibly prolific, and so her books have been turned into a television series here in Canada, sort of a Little House on the Prairie time thing.
it's the
Oh,
same as it's here as well.
Wind
And
Calls the
When
Heart. Yeah.
Calls the Heart, I read it
Yes.
when I was 16 and I
Oh.
fell in love with, I just thought I want to marry a Mountie one day. So, didn't happen, but
Well, it's not too late.
it's not too late. It may,
It's
my
not-
husband might have we've been married nearly 30 years. I think he
Oh,
might have something to say
oh my
about that.
goodness.
Okay, well, thank you. I will definitely check those out.
I love it.
Little House on the Prairie, of course, the disparity between the books and the television series is quite distinct. I loved the Little House on the Prairie books, and I think they remained quite true to fact. I remember the one called The Long Winter, where they almost
Right.
starved to death and they had to eat the seed grain that Alonzo had stored in the wall of his shack. And yeah, that was much more true to life. And I understand Little House on the Prairie is now being remade. So I'm interested to
Hmm.
see how they're going to do the new series.
Interesting.
Did
Mhm.
you read The Children's Blizzard by David Laskin?
Yes,
That
yes.
reminded me of The Long Winter as well.
Yeah, for sure. And those situations did happen in Canada as well. I went to a one-room country school.
I saw
Um,
that.
yeah, from
Oh,
grade 1 to grade 8. So, um, yeah, I mean, it was just like
incredible.
the book.
I love that. Well, let's talk about the ending. I always love to ask authors this, if you had any alternative endings in the mix, and did you always intend to kill Flora's husband?
Um, yes, I knew that Hector had to go one way or another,
Yes.
but
I'm glad he did.
but I thought that I would give him a fatal illness so that it kind of softened the idea that they murdered him in
Right,
cold blood, even though it was self-defense. I thought, well, he's kind of expendable because he's going to die anyway.
right.
Um, so I knew that he had to show up and be done away with, and I brainstormed a whole lot of ways in which he could die. I thought maybe he could die in a blizzard or fall off his horse or something, and then I thought, no, there has to be some agency on a part of the women here. They have to actually, there has to be a confrontation, and they have to actually do away with him. And then I thought, well, how are they going to get away with it? You can't
Mhm.
just kill somebody. And then I thought, well, actually, in those days, you probably could
Okay.
get away with it, especially if you had Jessie on your side and she could
Yeah.
spirit the body away.
I
And
love it. She was like, I got it. I'll take care of it.
yeah, exactly.
I would love to know anybody putting in the chat when I realized when she took that newspaper picture, I was like, oh no, that was
Yeah.
a mistake
Okay, you got that
for
right.
sure.
Yeah.
He was always looming, which is the great part about the book. He was always looming. He would find her. She becomes more public. She's meeting other people. I knew that eventually he was going to come around again for sure.
Yeah.
But I would like to know if anybody else picked that up.
And we talked about that today, where we love the historical fiction part of it, but there was this looming sense of dread that kind of propelled the plot forward with that
Um,
aspect of the book. So good job.
yes.
Thank you. So the audiobook was just released today, actually.
Oh, cool.
Simon and Schuster wanted to see whether, they want to know how the book is going to go before they commit to an audiobook, but it's just been so wildly successful beyond my dreams, really. It's been 13 weeks now on the Canadian bestseller list, so it's really taken off. Anyway, I got an email from the woman who was hired to narrate the audiobook, and she wrote and said, I just want to tell you how much I'm loving reading your book aloud. And when I got to the place where the neighbors built Flora a new house, I teared up and I had to
Oh,
stop recording.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's amazing.
yeah.
That's
well,
so great.
we picked the book for one of our subscription boxes because we loved it so much, and also highlighted it on our big book review, which we have usually about 1,200 people tuning in for that.
Wow.
So we're doing our part here in
Yes,
Texas.
Thank
we
you.
will
Thank
try
you
to
so
do
much.
bestseller on our end
Oh,
for the United
that's
States
great.
too.
I knew it would be popular in Western Canada. I'm happy that it's doing so well right across Canada and being discovered by American readers as well. It's really important to me. Thank you.
That's awesome.
Our pleasure. Well,
As far as the ending is concerned, I was just going to say I only write happy endings.
Okay.
I, I know that it's kind of fashionable now to have ambiguous endings, or, you're supposed to let the reader figure out what happened, but I can't do that. I have to tie up everything
Yeah.
and resolve everything. And I think that readers have really responded to that. And I think one of the reasons the book has been so popular is it's not particularly dark. A lot of historical fiction is quite dark. It has a lot of rape and torture and, suffering. And I wanted to write something more inspiring and uplifting. And I think that people, especially these days, they really need to read
Mhm.
books like that.
That's so true. I mean, they went through so much hardship anyway that,
Mhm.
and Kai in the chat said, we all say thank you for the happy ending.
Oh,
So
good. Thank you.
that's great. Well, on that note, we would love to know, do you have any other books in the works? Are you working on something new? We would love to hear about it so we'll know what to expect next.
Well, Simon and Schuster has offered me a contract for another book of my choice. They
Ooh,
just said, you write a book and we will publish it. So I have a deadline of June 30th next year to come up with a new manuscript, and they will publish it in spring 2027.
okay.
Now, I can't get too specific because I don't want to ruin my mojo,
Yes.
but but they want to capitalize on my brand, which they said is Western Canadian historical fiction, adventure, romance. And that is my wheelhouse. And so that is the type of book I will be writing again about a different part of Western Canadian history.
Can't
Awesome.
wait.
I love
Maybe
it.
they'll be at one of those royal mounties.
There might be a Mountie in it. I can't say.
That's
Yes.
hilarious.
We're excited. We're just so thrilled. And one of the best parts of our job is finding, new to us authors and getting to promote them. And your book was an absolute gem.
Oh,
And I
thank
could
you.
not say more wonderful things about it.
Thanks
Truly.
so much. Music to my ears.
Music to my eyes.
Well, thank you so much, Eleanor. We so appreciate your time, especially time away from your family, to talk with us about the book, because it really was wonderful. It's probably one of my top reads of this year. For next month, we are going to be featuring the book of The View from Lake Como with Adriana Triganani. I'm not going to say it
Trigiani.
correctly. Thank you.
Trigiani.
Thank
Yeah.
you. But we would love for all of you in the chat to join us reading her book. We had it in the shop and it was snatched up so fast, but there are more on their way. So if you want to buy one from Fabled, do not worry. There are more on their way. And I hope it reveals that, because they were bought so quickly, reveals to you how good this book is. I'll let Elizabeth tell you a little bit about it.
Yeah, so I love Adriana Trigiani. She writes also kind of just fantastic female, strong female fiction. Big Stone Gap was a lifetime favorite series of mine, but this is a contemporary story about an Italian-American family, and the strong female lead leaves Lake Como in America and goes to Italy, and there's romance involved. It's a perfect beachy summer armchair traveling book, and I have loved Adriana's books for 20 years. I can hardly wait to get to talk to her next month.
Very excited. That is Tuesday, August 19th at 7 p.m. In the chat, there are links for you to register. We will also put all these links to register and buy the book in our email that will go out 24 hours after this concludes. Elinor, thank you again. We will be looking for this next story, summer 2027, correct? Is that what you said?
Spring 2027.
Spring. Okay, no pressure, but we're thrilled and we can't wait to read it. So
Thank you.
thanks again.
If I could just mention one thing, for the past 12 years, I've been writing a monthly newsletter.
Okay.
And anyone is welcome to sign up. I try to create real content so that it isn't just about me. So there's a lot of history. I write about history. I write about writing and recommend a good book every month. There's more than you ever wanted to know about me on my website after I've been writing it for 12 years. So please feel free to Google my name and you'll see it and sign up if you wish.
That is wonderful. Well, I will actually put your website in the chat here too, and we'll include that in our email out tomorrow so you can get some new subscribers.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys
Thank you,
so
Elinor.
much.
All right. I'm thrilled. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.